Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for our webinar. Now, appreciate you taking time out of your day, and hopefully you'll leave this webinar with some extra knowledge that we're going to show you today. So please, just before we start the webinar, just make sure your microphones are turned off, and if you do have any questions throughout the webinar about anything that we're going to show you, please just use the chat function in TeamViewer and someone will be answering any questions posted through the chat function. Okay, so let's begin. So in today's webinar, we're going to be talking about and showing you favorites. So you may notice in TopSolid, when you open up your tree, where you've got all your main set, your entities, there's another tab in there called favorites. Now, favorites have been there for a number of years, but we're going to be discussing it today, and we're also going to be showing a video at the end of how the favorites work and using the favorites in a live project. I'm going to be talking about the neutral mode. So in 6.21, the neutral mode has been modified with some more advanced functionality. Also with the neutral mode, there's a right click involved in it. Again, that's another feature added in 6.21, so I'll be discussing that and showing the functionality of it. I'm also going to be talking about distributed components. Now, although a lot of our customers use distributed components on a day-to-day basis, there are a number of people who aren't aware of distributed components and what they do and how they can help in day-to-day work. So I'm going to be talking about it, and we're also going to be using some of distributed components in the live demo at the end. So in our live demo at the end, we're going to be drawing just a little office layout. Just to show you an example of that. So this is what we're going to be setting out at the end. So starting their sketches with the walls, bringing in the walls, volumes, bench tops, carcasses, everything. And we're also going to be using our favorites to bring in those items. And in this live demo, what we're going to be covering is sketching. So a quick way of sketching, some functionality within the sketch to make drawing any components much quicker. So quick sketching, copying and pasting of the sketches. So rather than drawing multiple rectangles, we're just drawing one rectangle. We're using a copy function to copy that across. And we're dimensioning. We're going to be using another function that's new in 6.21 is a merge function. Now that merge function is related to merging of dimensions and parameters. We're also going to be using some new room components, windows and doors, some library volumes. So rather than extruding our sketches, we're going to be including volumes onto our sketches. Plus, we're just going to be also using extruded profiles. So in your library, that will be called extruded components. So in there you've got timber, metal and aluminium. So we're going to be using an angle aluminium to the underside of our bench tops. Moving on. So our favorites. So the whole purpose of using the favorites is a collection of your most commonly used library items. Now, drawing a project from start to finish sometimes can be a little time consuming when you're having to go constantly back into the library and search for items. Purpose of the favorites is it's a configuration of your most commonly used items. So when we're having a look in here, So we access the favorites and we have categories set up in there. So in this screenshot we have cabinetry favorites. Under our carcasses we have our most commonly used carcasses. Then we have our wall carcasses, tall carcasses. We can have the door systems. This can be set up any configuration that you like. This is something that you set up yourself. So later this week a video will be released, a video tutorial will be released on how you can set up these and using the favorites. The default configuration for the favorites is in your local. So you can have it set up to your own requirements without affecting any other users on the network. Every user can have their own configuration without affecting library components. It's like a shortcut to the libraries. It's not a copy of it. It's just like a shortcut. So when you want to change the favorites to a different category, as you can see in this second screenshot, we've right clicked on the word favorite up the top to bring down more information to change a favorite. So in here we've got 3 categories. You can have as many or as few as you like. So we've got benchtop, cabinetry favorites, which is shown here, and then project tools, which is like the walls and windows and doors. So at the end of this I'll be showing you a video of using these favorites. Okay, moving on. Neutral mode. So neutral mode function, it's been improved upon. So normally people have been using neutral mode to just like exit a command, hitting neutral mode, but now it's much more than that. With more functionality applied to it, when you're in a certain area, you hit neutral mode, you can then click on an item and you get different options available. So just looking at this, when we haven't got anything in our model, we hit neutral mode. If we were to click on the screen, we get these options available. When in a graphics area, we've got items drawn, we get these options available. Now in the sketch mode, we use neutral mode. Depending on what we click on, we get different options available. So if I was to click on a dimension whilst in sketch mode, we get these options. Now this merge one, which I'll be demonstrating later, we can merge parameters and dimensions together. So by merging multiple dimensions together, we modify one and they all change. When selecting a line in sketch mode, we'll get these options available. So by using the neutral mode, it's another way of modifying, but with more functionality in it. It's the same with library items. We can hit neutral mode and select a library item. It's like modifying. Whilst in the neutral mode, there's a right click function. So when you're in neutral, you select an item. Whilst you do have these commands available at the top of your screen, should you hold down your right click for a couple of seconds, you'll get those options available in the right click menu, as you can see here. So in this screenshot, we're in neutral mode. We've selected a library item, but instead of coming back up to the top of the screen to select an option, we can just hold down our right click, so anywhere on the screen, and select that function from the right click. So I'll just give you a small demonstration of that right here. So even though I'll be showing it in the video, so I'm in neutral mode now. Now if I select a door, because that door has catalogs available to it, they're available here in this drop down. Now again, I'm in neutral mode. I select the cupboard. Again, those functions are available up here. But instead of coming up to the top of the screen again, hold down my right click and I get those options available. So again, neutral mode, I select the door, hold down my right click and I get those options. And there's all my catalog file options as well. So in 621, neutral mode has much more functionality to it. Just going back on those favorites that we were talking about earlier. So these are the favorites in here. So in my model, I have favorites already set up. So if I right click on my favorite here, I can change what I want to see. So if I change from project tools to cabinetry favorites, my cabinetry favorites will then load and then I can start using them. By having them available here, it just saves time having to go in assembly, include standard, look for the library items. I can grab the library item and just drag it directly into my model, and by doing that it starts the inclusion process. So now it's asking for the block to insert it into. That can be used for anything. If you brought items in, so I've brought a carcass in here, just a 2-rail carcass, I can then bring that back into the model and then we can start the inclusion process again. There's no need to have to go back into the library to reinsert items. Alright, moving on. Distributed components. Although many of you do and use distributed components, many customers aren't aware of distributed components and what they can do. So distributed components are, again, library items that work between two given points, and it's for distribution of volumes. Now these volumes do not get exported to cutting list or to drafting. They remain purely as a design tool. Now the way they work is the components, you can modify the dimensions depending on how you include them. So when the dimensions change, if we've brought them in a sequential mode, the end item will change. If you brought them in alternate mode, the middle one will change if you go to change the last one. So the difference between sequential mode and alternate mode. Sequential mode is working in numerical order. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when you've brought 5 units in. Now with this one, we've brought 5 units in, but this one on the left hand is the first one, this one on the right hand is the second one. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the difference between sequential mode and alternate mode. You can modify the dimensions of anything in there. So when we bring the distributed components in, they're equally spaced. Every volume is the same width. We can modify that and change the width and give it fixed values. And by giving that one a fixed value, all the other ones will change because they're all equal size. So we change one and the other 4 will then become bigger or smaller depending on what is left over. If for whatever reason you then need to reset it, you can reset just the one and then they'll all become equal value again. Okay, moving on. Just going to show you a video now on setting out a project and how that project is completed in a matter of minutes of just using the simple library items and a few simple steps involved in that. So throughout the video I'm going to be pausing it to explain certain things. So let's get started. So I'm starting off with a standard template, nothing fancy, but I'm going to be sketching out guidelines for my walls. So just entering the values in here, given the basic information, nothing special about the guidelines for the walls. And we'll give some parameters. Now we're just going to constrain them. So using neutral mode, I'm selecting dimension, and as you can see I can hit constraint in my Y, then the next dimension, again constraint in the X. So that's my sketch constrained. Now I'm drawing the sketch. Copy. I'm selecting the sketch. I select linear. Now in here, after I select linear, I'm then just given the direction by selecting a first point, and then my second point is just over to the side of it. Total distance per instance, and then 4. Now I'm going to go through and apply my dimensions. So because I want to constrain it to the side and back, I dimension one of them. Dimension the width. Now with the dimensions I'm going to apply in the middle, I'm going to end up merging these dimensions. So as you can see, I selected one dimension and then I've got the option over here to merge. So I'm going to be merging this dimension with these dimensions here. So when I change 1 to 0, they'll all change to 0. So merge that one with that and that. Okay. So modify 1, change it to 0, they all change. I replace the back one to 0 as well. Now I can just dimension the front ones, and that's going to equal filler width. Change that one to my end panel width, TE, and I can give fixed values. These next two are going to be cabinets. Alright, now I just need to finish constraining. Okay. So I apply my constraints to the back, finish off, and this one to that, and we'll constrain the front as well. One more, and done. Okay, cool. Now what I just did on that side, I'm going to repeat again over on this side. So I'm going to draw some volumes for my tool units. So following the same procedure, I draw one sketch, I use that copy function up here. I'm going to be copying this in a linear, but working up in this direction. So use the bounding box to select it, making sure I'm going 0 angle. Now I'm just going to apply constraints. Sorry, I'm only human. Apply all that. And constrain the back. So just getting our constraints out the way. Now, we can give it dimensions. Dimension in between. And with all those dimensions in there, I can then merge them afterwards. Okay, so neutral mode. I select one of my dimensions and I'm going to merge that one with all of these. Just change one and they all change. Replace that one with one of the merged dimensions. Okay, so final constraint is I'm going to apply same length. So those cabinets will be equal width. And then all I need to do is just change my panel thicknesses. So I end and filler width down the bottom. Okay, done. Alright, so now what we're going to be doing is bring in our walls. So as you can see, I just dragged it in from the side. Rather than having to go back in to the library, we're just dragging the items in. So this is doors with a jamb on it. I'm going to be positioning this on the wall using constraint positioning. So selecting the bottom to line up with the bottom. Now many of you don't have these items in there, that's fine. Just let us know and we can forward them onto you. After the inclusion process, the automatic process is applied to cut out for the door. Now just going to include a window. So using the same process, using constraint positioning, I'm going to put it onto the back wall. So entering the parameter questions, again using constraint positioning, I'm just aligning faces with other faces. So I'll just enter some parameters, get it all lined up. Alright, now I want the bottom on there, and let's put this side against this wall. Done. Finish off the process with automatic. So we've got the window with the cutout. Done. Nice. Okay, turning the walls off, I'm going to include volumes now. Now, these volumes, most of you will already have in your library. Let us know if you don't have them in your library. But again, I'm just dragging them out. So rather than extruding my sketches, the purpose of using these volumes is these volumes are already in predefined layers, plus they already have parameters assigned to them. So the size of the sketch, they're adapting to that, so the width and the depth. So what we bringing them in with are parameters to shift it from the floor to allow for kick height and the overall height for our floor cupboards. So selecting the sketch and saying automatic, it comes in. Each volume is individual to the next. So they're still individual components, but they're in their own library. They've got their own pen colors assigned to them. They've got all the shifts applied to them. So now I'm bringing in panel. So as you can see, that panel is off the floor, but I'm just going to change that kick height in here. I'm replacing it so the panel sits on the floor. Now I can bring in the next volume, and that sits off the floor to match up with the kick height. So finishing off these volumes, and we've just got a filler on the end. Done. Okay, now our volumes are done. We're going to be drawing volumes or sketches for our kickers. So just drawing one rectangle and dimensioning around. So the sides and the back will equal 0, but the front is going to equal a parameter for the kick setting. So using the merge function, I'm going to be merging the back and the sides to equal my right hand or my left hand side dimension. How that equals 0, I want the back one to equal 0 as well. And this side. Done. So that's one kicker sketch done. Now repeat the sketch for over here. Same process. Dimension the front, tell it SK. I just dimension that side, give it the 0, dimension the back, dimension that bottom. Now I can merge those parameters to equal the top one. And there my kicker sketch. Now I'm ready to include my kicker volumes. Alright, so now we've just brought in the volumes for our kickers. Now we've got everything done so we can start setting out. So what we're going to be bringing in first, we're going to be bringing in our volumes for our coordinate systems. So within the distributed components have to work off coordinate systems. So when I go to our benchtops, coordinate system distribution, so I bring in the driver block and then I offset it from one side because the benchtop isn't going straight between walls. It's going against one wall, finishing against another benchtop. These benchtops that are in the distributed component library already contain your mason's miter, your toggle bolts. So hence the reason why we're using these library items. So if I just pause it there. So in the distributed components library, we've got the coordinate system library item. So we're bringing in the driver block and it's got coordinate systems already assigned to it. So kicker, base units, benchtop, splashback, wall cupboards, and bulkhead. So when you bring in distributed components, they go between coordinate system on this side, and in this case, they're going to go to this coordinate system, this blue one. It could go to the wall as such as well. So continuing that, so I'm going to bring in a benchtop, depth. The length of the benchtop isn't important at this stage because I'm going to tell it the length in the inclusion. So when I go distribution, I say between that coordinate system and this coordinate system, that's my length that I've given it. So as you can see, the benchtop is there. It's got a mason's miter already on it, and it's got the toggle bolts on it. And now bring in the other benchtop, and the machining process in the first benchtop will create the mason's miter female cutouts in there. So now we just do automatic process, and we've got the cutouts in there. All right, so now extruded components. So with the extruded components, I'm bringing in, everyone has this again in their library, and we're going to be creating a curve for our angle to go on. So we're starting from the inside of our panel. We're going to be running around up to the corner, down to the other cupboards, and then back out to the front. So drawing a curve along the back of the bench top, down one side, stop that. Okay, and then our cut, we're going to do a miter cut. So they're all the internal cutouts. So there we have aluminium extrusion underneath our bench top, all in there. So turn off our walls. We're going to begin to include our cabinets now. So starting with our carcasses, as you can see, in our favourites tree, we have carcass, we have the base, wall, tall, we have door systems, left hand, right hand, double, and so on. Again, we're just grabbing the item and we're just going to be dragging it out to start the inclusion process, and then we can select where we want those cupboards to be. So if I continue with that. So again, the favorites is something that you can set up to suit your own requirements. You can have as many or as few items in there as you want. So bringing all those cupboards in, they're in, done. And we'll bring in our kicks and our panels and fillers, and then we can turn off our construction volumes and start filling up our cupboards with items. So let's bring a filler into there, another one onto there. And we'll bring in our panels. Okay, so now we can turn off our volumes. So we're going to start including shelves first. So we're just going to bring shelves into two of the items first. And I'm going to tell it, right, just one shelf. And then what I'm going to do is just change the number of shelves in the tall one to equal 3. Oh, 4, 5, sorry. And I'll include the other one. So as you can see, if you've noticed or not, so far we've been dragging everything in from the favorites. But now what I've just done is in the main set, because I've already included shelves, I've dragged shelves in again from the main set. So once you drag them in, it commences the insertion process and they appear in your tree. So now I'm bringing in double door drivers. So double doors, nothing special there. We're just bringing them in to finish off the inclusion. Now drawers. So bringing in 3 unequal drawers. The unequal drawers, we'll do automatic for all, and then change the top drawer front to be 125, the second one to be 250, and then the third one will be whatever's left over. So turning our layers back on. So within a few minutes, we've just laid out a whole little office. After that, you can go through, you can put your stuff in sets, you can do the drafting and so on. So open for any questions that people may have about it. If you want to use the chat feature to ask any questions, ask away. I don't know if you would like to add anything, Anud or Adam, to what we've been doing today. Oh, so there's a question there, had add items to favorites. So we're going to be releasing a tutorial soon on creating the favorites. So today we're just showing how the favorites are used and some of the features and functions that you may or may not know about, and so no how-tos and tutorials, that's going to be separate altogether. So we'll be releasing a little video on how to create your own favorites. But yeah.
So with all the videos, the webinar and the how-tos, as we get them done, they'll all be added to the YouTube site. So we can send out a notification via email to let you guys know that when they'll be available. Other than that, if you just want to keep an eye on any new stuff popping up on the YouTube channel.
All right. I would say within the next week we'll upload a tutorial on creating favorites, because we haven't created the tutorial yet, so we'll create in the next few days and we'll upload it. Once it's uploaded, we'll let everyone know so people can jump in and start creating their own. Yeah, by all means, if does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask Anud or Emmerich? Yeah, I can see Dale has a question. Yeah, so with the distributed components, so Dale, what I can do for you there is I can send you the we do have a training tutorial on that, so that will explain everything in great detail on how all that works, at different scenarios for the different functions in there. So there's one for you, Emmerich or Anud. Stephen has asked when they could see version 7 of TopSolid'Wood. You're back. Yeah. Okay. Would Emmerich like to add anything to this? Or open platform, open stage? Or just in general, would you like to? Yeah. Yeah, so yes. Yeah, and with every new version, there's yeah, exciting new features, functionality, not only new features and functions, but there's been updates to existing features like, for instance, what we'll show in there, the neutral mode. So with that functionality in there, that neutral mode's been in there for a long time, but you stepped it up and added more functionality to an existing function. So yeah, it's important to keep up to date with the latest version so you can enjoy all the new features. Um, sorry, so there was a question there about the merge feature and wanting to see how merging the dimensions was. So I'll just quickly show something. So in here, if we just do a quick little sketch, let's just copy across. So I'm going to copy that, the distance per instance. Sorry, I did that wrong, didn't I? Let's do it through. All right, so if I place a dimension into there, now just by selecting that dimension, we've got these options available here. Now, if I go to neutral mode and select the dimension, we get merge. So if I merge that and that together, that's done. So now when I can change to 0, they both change. So I hope that answers that question for you. So merging the dimensions. All right, if no one has any further questions, or if people have any further questions outside the webinar, please feel free to email us at support. If there's anything that you've seen here today that you want to see in more detail or like to know more information, again, email us at support, where we've got a lot of the training tutorials, training guides. We can show you online as well in the support. And if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see in future webinars, let us know. We do have a list of ideas to do for next coming webinars. But if we see a consistency request for certain operations, certain tasks that people want to see in action and do, please let us know, and we can create webinars based around that. But I hope you all enjoyed today, and look forward to doing it again real soon. All right, so thank you everyone for joining. Okay, bye everyone.